to talk about population. I read in Carl Sagan's book, Billions and Billions, the last book that he wrote in 1996, that the world population is increasing, a net increase of 240,000 people a day. That's 250,000 people a day more are born than die, okay? Now, this exponential growth, where is that going to lead? What's going to happen to the people on Earth eventually if we keep expanding our population like that?
Well, I think the first shock is that where we really get pinched is in drinking water. That's going to be the first hit. There's the world's population. For those of you, by the way, who don't believe in global warming, this goes it's part and parcel of this same thing. I know that you don't believe that having a billion people in India and more than 1 billion people in China, it has absolutely nothing to do with global warming. Couldn't possibly warm the Earth by a degree. But remember, for every degree that we go up, we lose 10% of available drinking water. Lose. And on top of that, you've got more people to support. So this whole aspect of this population, we've now hit 300 million people in the United States.
7 billion worldwide, I think.
7 billion worldwide, yeah, 6 and change. But there are, you would think that in 2007, there would be large, sophisticated forces on Earth that would begin to reason that we would have these backstops that would begin to put reasoned statements out there saying, we have to start being concerned about global population, and the only institutions that we have out there with messages, whatever you do, don't practice birth control. Whatever you do, let's not discuss abortion under any circumstances.
Well, I want to talk about that, but just a second. There are a number of civilizations in the history of human population that have used up all the available resources and have just expired. And right now you have a catastrophe in Haiti where people do not have enough to eat. And the reason is they cut down all the trees. When the trees were down, the soil eroded and they can't plant anything and they are starving. And I mean, I really think that's the ultimate end result here of this population growth, is we are going to have massive illness from bad water and massive starvation. And we're beginning to see that already in Africa. The weather patterns are changing, I think, as part of global warming. And when you have this many people to feed, the slightest little wrinkle from the ordinary, and all of a sudden you don't have enough food. And for the Catholic Church, I grew up a Catholic, Mark grew up a Catholic, for them to continue to preach against birth control in the face of this worldwide problem that we are facing is a mortal sin. And they know what I'm talking about when I say that, okay? It is absolutely reprehensible. These old men, these celibate old men, have no interest whatsoever in what goes on in somebody's bed, okay? And they ought to stay out of that. And I cannot believe that they are adhering to no birth control. It just is unbelievable.
In Brazil, in the last Pope, who I respected very much, but for this his trip to Brazil, when he condemned birth control. Well, the biggest cities in Brazil, there are areas of the country where they shoot kids because they're just bands of wandering children that destroy everything in sight. But he's there arguing against birth control. At some point you have to say, who's working for who and to what end?
You know, and it's not only birth control, but AIDS. You know, we have this abstinence-only program going on in the United States now, part of the Bush administration policy, where they teach kids, they don't talk about birth control except to say that condoms are ineffective. That's what they tell kids. Well, so they don't use condoms.
So the kid's got a way out to not use it.
Yeah, and so you have unwanted teenage pregnancy, you've got all kinds of venereal disease, but worse yet, you've got this going on in other countries. The AIDS epidemic in Africa is just decimating the population, and they don't have condoms available. We have to have big 50-gallon barrels of condoms in every village, in every village in the world, and people can just reach in there and take a handful and use all they want. Believe me, people would use them if they were available, and we can make them available. They cost 2 cents each on a massive scale to be made available, and think how many lives that would be saved.
The world is at stake. It's not even just a localized population. The world as we know it, for our grandchildren and their grandchildren, their world is at stake.
Yeah, and to not take this problem seriously and get out of your mode that you've been in all these years, you know, just to stick with the program no matter what, okay, that's being a big time dummy. And people are going to suffer. Innocent people are going to suffer because of that. It's too bad.